This is some big news in the football world, man, when it comes to the business side. So Gary Neville sells a majority stake in his 200 million podcast business as the overlap hits 2.2 billion views. Crazy. Put it to screen. Gary Neville will have sold a majority stake in his 200 million football media company, The Overlap, after his surpassed 2.2 billion views across platforms. Founded in 2021, YouTube network now pulls in 38 million monthly views. That's crazy. And has been acquired by global Europe biggest radio groups as it scales beyond digital into mainstream media. Neville remains co-chair and the face of flagship shows Stick to Football alongside Carragher, Keane, Wright, and Jill Scott. Powerful. This is what you need to understand. Like, this is, even when it comes to the football space, this is these are legends in football, and they're sitting down on podcasts, building their own IP, and even flicking the screen just so you can understand what's going on here. Look, you get me? Global owner Capital Heart and LBC has acquired a majority stake in The Overlap from previous investors, and they're getting every sort of network into their group, bro. They have great relationships. Imagine that, like, crazy. Like, this is their podcast here. Big shout out to Ian Wright. And
The Overlap is the best football podcast in the UK.
Jill, you love meeting everyone. Honestly, I reckon you'd love to meet Jack the Ripper. You love meeting everyone.
In what is such a saturated podcast industry, this one is one of the best around. What I love about The Overlap is how up-to-date and consistent it is. They've also got some of the biggest names in the Premier League era as their hosts. Having these guys on like Roy Keane, who is just so entertaining.
This is why it's mad as well. Like, so right, bro. They make so much money. Imagine, crazy. Like, it's actually crazy. Like, starting from somewhere, having an exit, and now you're just chilling. It's like, I'm bored anyway. I'm a millionaire anyway. What do? I want to be an advocate into this space anyway.
Really makes it easy for them to bring on other big names. Like, they just recently had Daniel Levy on, who is now the ex-chairman of Tottenham Hotspur. The fact they can get these big names on this podcast, crazy, to me, says it is the biggest podcast in the UK. Now, in this football podcast market, like I said...
And it's good, man. It's just contacts over the years. Now, back then, now, bro, they've got generational contacts, bro. From then to now to that, everyone to speak. And it's crazy because, obviously, there's always going to be mad disagreements inside the podcast, but everyone's respectful, bro. Powerful.
It is very saturated. You know, you've got the likes of The Rest is Football as another sort of pro footballers podcast, but also you've got other ones which are kind of the normal guy, the sort of YouTuber podcast in Pitchside. But let me know, do you rate the Overlap podcast as much as I do, or do you think there's something better?
Powerful, man. They've got a cult audience because they're legends, you get me? And
this might be the best podcast episode of 2025, and we're like 2-3 days into the year. Martin O'Neill on The Overlap was absolutely hilarious. From start to finish, pure banter. And I think it caught me by surprise because he weren't one of their managers. Like, you didn't think he had a big personality like that. This guy is...
Martin O'Neill, he looks very strict. He just looks strict. Like, he's ready. You get me? So the
hilarious, ripping people from start to finish. When we talk about Barclays ballers, we talk about Barclays managers as well, because I know him from Aston Villa personally. I know him a little bit from his Celtic career, but mainly Aston Villa, Martin O'Neill, that's what I remember him for. And he was a class manager. But hearing him talk about the history of his career, history of his managerial career, it's made me want to go and watch a Nottingham Forest documentary just to really understand what was going on. Martin O'Neill on The Overlap, one of the best podcast episodes I've seen. It might be the top. It's definitely going to be top 10 for 2025.
Dope. And obviously, when I talk about podcasts, I have to attach the boy Joe Budden. Like, Joe Budden's business partner has come out. Get me? how the Joe Budden podcast became a 20 million a year business.
We're not just a media company, we're a data company. I have been collecting the data from every platform that will provide it for us for almost 10 years. I'm not looking at stats or analytics anymore. I'm looking at a blueprint. Numbers tell a story. Who's listening, where they're listening from, what times they're listening, what's the retention rate. Somewhere along the lines of 2018 to 2020, I was watching an audience become ritualistically attached to the show in a way where I'm like, this is no longer about popularity.
Crazy. Ache, that is a cult. That's what you call crazy. That's what you just dumbing down. And they're just, you carry on. You build. Every time they drop, they've got their audience and they're locked in.
This is something much bigger. I was watching their listening and viewing habits and thinking to myself, wait a second, how much money is it possible for us to earn? We weren't under an exclusive licensing deal. My first thought was, what if we created our own app? And we just had everyone coming directly to us. I thought, okay, Google, like we could set up passive Google AdSense. We could set up a subscription model. I wasn't thinking Patreon at first. But then I started looking at the weekly listenership. How many people were showing? We're not just a media company, we're a data company. We're showing up weekly. Let's, for the sake of this conversation, say 1 million people a week were listening to 2 episodes. It's over 4 million unique listeners a month.
That's crazy. Ache, over 4 million unique listeners a month. We need is what? 10%.
I started doing math. Let's call it 4 million people times 2%. 4 million people listening a month times 2% of the audience is 80,000 people. What if I can get 80,000 people to pay us a monthly subscription? And then I did the math. And I said, times $10, 800,000 a month. If I can get 80,000 people to move away from Spotify, move away from our free tier, and to pay for a direct subscription to exclusive content, not bonus content, that's the lazy way out of Patreon, but to exclusive content, well, then I have an $800,000 a month business, which far exceeds what we were getting at Spotify, which far exceeds the offers I was receiving from other competing platforms. And that's where the dreaming, the thoughts turned into conviction. Joe and I looked and I said, buddy,
this is what you call ache. This is what you call having the right team. And this is what you got to understand. Looking at what Gary Neville and that are doing, and looking what Joe Budden and that are doing, is both crazy, powerful. Legends that been in sport, that dominate the game. The underdog that everyone hated once, that's just dumbed down and just blocked out the noise.
2% for showing up weekly. Let's, for the sake of this conversation, say 2%. That's nothing. You think if we shut down the show off of Spotify and Apple right now, 2%'s not coming? They're watching this shit 40 hours a week.
Fact.
They're hooked. This is their Howard Stern. This gets them through work. They use it for entertainment. They listen with their significant other. They're laughing. They're crying. They're winning with us. I don't see offers anywhere close to that. The opportunity is much greater for us to take a swing here. And I said, as long as we own a piece of the company we get in business with, then I think it's a zero risk proposition. And that's how the Patreon conversation started. And we went in there, we didn't get $1. We didn't want money. We wanted no advance. Like we wanted no support.
That's crazy, isn't it? And that's the power when you're here and you're building and in football. If you're in a football space and you got to do everything. As a footballer, you see Raheem Sterling started his academy. Amazing. You know what I mean? As anything, you got to always think of the plan A, plan B. Do you know what I mean?
Just wanted the ability to really figure out our value. And we wanted skin in the game with the company we were going to bring that value to. And we got both.
Amazing, man. Good to see. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Big shout out to these lot, man. Literally legends. That is a crazy, powerful move. You get me? And look how quick it's been. 5 years, 200 mil. You get me? Obviously, he sold majority of his stake in his 200 mil. So that's crazy, man. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Crazy.